Welcome to the Sisterhood of Limitless Living podcast. I'm your host, Dr. April Moreno. My background is in public health informatics, and I'm here along this journey of living with autoimmune, just like other women, and we are known as the autoimmune community of multicultural women thriving. I hope you enjoy our episode with you today. Let's get started. Sisterhood, happy spring. Welcome to another episode of the Sisterhood of Limitless Living podcast. I'm your host, Dr. April Moreno, and it is the month of April, my favorite month of the year as well. And in this episode, we're talking about the power of mental health in the autoimmune and the Latinx communities. We're speaking to Melissa Moya-Brinckman, who is a mental health therapist who serves Philadelphia, North Carolina, and South Carolina in her work as a mental health therapist. She is a Latina and she is a daughter of Cuban migrants, and she is first-generation American who is sharing her story in an upcoming book about how to become a good Latinx daughter, how to be a good Latinx daughter. In this episode, we'll be talking to her about her clients in the autoimmune and the Latinx communities, how to prioritize mental health in these community spaces, and how there have been specific characteristics of autoimmune patients who are mental health clients, and how we've been possibly more open to medication for mental health because of other disease-modifying drugs and understanding the power of the mind over the body. I think that the chronic illness journey does give us that understanding over time about those linkages. So we talk about those things today in this episode. Before we begin, I want to tell you about some of the favorite masks that we have. There's actually an upcoming episode on PPE that I did with Support Fibro, Melissa Talwar, and that was a lot of fun. We went through talking about all our favorite masks and our favorite gear during the pandemic because it's not going anywhere soon. We're still here with the pandemic. One of my favorite masks is the Halo mask. The Halo mask captures actually over 99% of all airborne particulates in both directions, from the outside and from the inside, down to an incredible zero point 0.1 microns. If you use our link, 20% of the sales, if you purchase the Halo mask, will be donated to the Autoimmune Community Institute. So that's bit.ly/ACI Halo mask, all in lowercase. And it's also in the show notes if you're interested in checking out one of my favorite masks, the Halo mask with the nanofilter technology. So in this episode, I hope you enjoy hearing about mental health in autoimmune and Latinx communities with Melissa Moya-Brinckman. Thank you for joining us today on the Sisterhood of Limitless Living podcast. Today we have another bilingual episode. I'm really excited about this. And we have Melissa Moya-Brinckman, who is here to join us on this conversation of Latinx mental health in the autoimmune community. She is a licensed mental health therapist on the East Coast. And I'm really excited that she reached out to talk to us today about mental health, the importance of how we can reach out to our Latinx community, and why we're choosing to do this again bilingually, just like we did in our last episode with the legal drug dealer. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of mental health along the autoimmune and chronic illness journey. We're going to be talking about how the Latinx community can find strength through this, how they can develop these mental health skills and get through these challenges. Maybe some of the cultural challenges as well might be addressed here today. But then we'll also be listening to Melissa tell us about her new book. And I'm really excited to hear about that. It's a book in progress, but we are looking out for that in the coming near future, which we're really excited about. So today I want to introduce you to Melissa Moya-Brinckman. Welcome, Melissa. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting to be able to just speak to your listeners and help them find ways to cope and deal with the autoimmune disorders that they are probably facing, along with so many other challenges that just everybody has been facing recently.
Right. Yeah. So many of us we've all been dealing with something around the world during this pandemic year. It's been a challenge, but today we want to talk specifically to the diverse community, autoimmune and Latinx community out there, communities of color, as well as we discuss the challenges of mental health and how to seek help.
I am a licensed mental health therapist. I'm licensed in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and South Carolina. I'm the daughter of Cuban refugees. So I grew up first generation American, originally from Miami, but I've just been up and down the East Coast. I got into mental health because my own dad suffers from schizophrenia, and he would have like episodes of like experiencing psychosis or depression. So that was kind of what led me to this. And I have a lot of people ask me, like, why did you want to become a therapist? And I tell them I wanted to be what I needed when I was going through all of that. So that's like my big goal with the work that I do is I want to be able to provide support, guidance. Sometimes I have clients that don't even need like advice necessarily. They just need the space to be able to talk about whatever it is that's bothering them.
I agree. There's so many reasons why we go into the fields that we choose to go into, and a lot of it is personal. They say like the personal is political, or they say things like, what is it? Research is me search, and little phrases you hear here and there. And it's so true because there's a reason, there's a motivation for why we're doing the things that we choose to do with our time here on Earth. Thank you for sharing your experience, the challenges that you've faced over the years in your own family situations. So today, I would love for us to talk about the Latinx community, some of the clients that you've worked with. What is it that you have seen in terms of mental health needs in the Latinx community?
At first, it begins with normalizing seeking help and admitting that maybe something is wrong, like even if it's having a hard time with depression or anxiety. I would say that that's the number one issue that clients face, is that they're scared to even come into a session or to open up about things that maybe aren't perfect. Also, just like family expectations too, like that's like a big one. Sometimes I work with men who are suffering from depression, but they feel like I'm the man of the house, I'm the provider, but there are weeks at a time where I feel like I can't even get out of bed and my family is expecting me to go to work. So like normalizing some of that language for them is really important. So I would say, yeah, fear of seeking therapy, family expectations. For first generation Americans, like that assimilation and acculturation, like balancing two worlds, that can be very stressful too. Like you belong to your culture of origin, but you're also living in the country that you were born in. So how do you balance two identities and two worlds at once?
Yeah, so we are seeing these commonalities across the Latinx community, I would say, and even among other diverse communities, this importance of family and not being able to discuss what people are personally dealing with. I see it a lot in the Asian American community as well, where people just don't feel this ability to share about their personal challenges and struggles. I'm curious to know, like generationally, are you seeing like different, are you seeing any improvements, any changes, I should say, maybe more so, in terms of how people are communicating what they're going through? Is it a little bit different now than maybe some of the, the older generations? Are you seeing any differences in the processing of these things?
Oh, yeah, big time. Like I see that the older generation, like they're really scared to talk about certain things. I even mentioned in my book a client that I had who would whisper in the office, even though I had like noise canceling machines, we were totally confidential, but just that fear of admitting something was very like present in our sessions. And then the younger generation, they're just so open. And I get referrals all the time because they're telling their friends that they're in therapy. So they're like normalizing it, they're talking about it, they're very open. And that's exciting to see from my perspective, that they're just keeping it real. They're saying things at home aren't great. I'm having a hard time with my boyfriend or my girlfriend. And they're just like open to having a third party that's objective, gives some perspective and guidance in the situation. So that's like really cool to see that difference.
That's really good to hear. I'm curious also if it's generational in terms of like their age range, age group, but then also the differences like in terms of like acculturation and like how many generations someone's been here in this country, in this particular culture. Maybe there's some similarities there as age range compared with like how many generations someone's been here in this country.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I think that there are like several factors that are contributing to maybe why the younger generations are being more open. And I even wonder too if like social media and being so active on social media, I'm thinking that that has probably had an influence because the kids will tell me, oh, I saw this video on TikTok about like what to do when you're feeling depressed. Like, so people are more open to putting their stuff out there. And I think that that kind of helps to normalize being kind of out there and open about whatever you have going on.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like this is one of the benefits of technology, one of the benefits of social media. We're hearing a lot these days about kind of the negative impacts of social media, but it is so good to hear that there are some benefits, that people are able to normalize the struggles that they're going through because of social media, hearing about other people's stories. They're able to share, they're able to get information and support through things like Instagram, Twitter, so on, even Facebook groups, I think, is where I've seen a lot of support. Yeah, it's a benefit. Technology can be helpful.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because the resources and the information are all there. And it almost can have like this layer of confidentiality too. Because if you're on Instagram and you click like a hashtag, like hashtag anxiety relief, and then you're looking at professionals who are posting tips and little like tidbits and information, like you can do that like so easily. And yeah, you have that resource right there that's available to you. And even maybe like scrolling through comments and seeing other people that are having a hard time, like it helps you to feel not as alone in like whatever challenge you're facing.
That makes sense. So there is community out there, even in the virtual space. I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about why mental health is important in the Latinx community. What do we need to know? What have you seen? Why is this important? Why does this matter right now?
It's super important because people have been suffering for so long in silence because there's a huge culture of silence, especially in regards to like mental health challenges within the Latinx community. Our culture is all about like fuerza and like being strong all the time. And so we shy away from anything that's like quote unquote weakness. And a lot of the times that includes mental health challenges like anxiety, depression, PTSD. So I think it's super important to normalize talking about it and to let people know there's help here. This is a resource for you. You don't have to be alone in fighting this. There are a lot of professionals that are here that want to help and that are happy to help. So I feel like that's like a big theme in my book. And I use my own stories of growing up with a parent with severe mental illness. And I also have like little stories of that my clients have shared, of course, everything anonymous, but experiences that they have had so that whoever reads it sees that like you're not alone. This is actually so much more common than you think. It's just that we're conditioned to really like keep things within the family. And I talk about that as well, just growing up. And I'm sure you probably experienced some of this where everything stays here. Like we don't share certain things about ourselves with outsiders because then that kind of makes you look quote unquote weak, which is like the Latinx no, you have to always be fuerte. That's the goal.
Can you tell us about some of the, of course, with confidentiality, can you tell us about some of the clients that you've had over the years about with chronic illness, autoimmune conditions, and other chronic illnesses, how they've been processing these challenges?
Yeah, like I've had clients that are like teenagers who have been diagnosed with lupus and adults who have been diagnosed with lupus. I had one client who had fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis like at the same time. And it's super challenging. Like there's a feeling of powerlessness, there's fatigue, even with having to take so many medications. They disclose feeling fatigued even with that. And because sometimes like their physical body feels kind of limited, then certain coping skills become limited. So it becomes my goal with them to get creative about what they can do with their physical, like being physically limited, that can help to counteract some of the depression and anxiety that they face.
Can you tell us about some of the challenges of people who are living with autoimmune conditions and mental health challenges, the medication aspect of that. Have you seen any sort of difficulties in communicating to diverse individuals about the need for something like various different types of mental health, anxiety, depression related medications? What has that experience been like?
With my clients who have autoimmune disorders, because they already take medications for that, I find that they're actually more open to taking psychotropic medications because they value that like the brain is a part of the body. Like I had one client with an autoimmune disorder say like cuando la computadora se rompe, like pointing to her head, the rest of the body doesn't function. So I need my computadora to work.
Right.
And I thought that that was perfect because she valued how her other sets of medication was helping her. And so she was more open to take like anti-anxiety medication, for example. So that community I find is more open to psychotropic medication. It's more so like my Latinx clients who like don't have physical conditions and they're not used to taking medications. They won't take multivitamins even. Like they really lean strongly on holistic things, which is cool. However, sometimes the brain needs something a little bit stronger to help like support its function. And so that's when it becomes more of like an uphill battle.
¿Hay botánicas allá también en el este
Sí, oh, sí,
del
claro que
país?
sí.
Yeah, I mean, they're helpful as well, right? But I definitely agree with the importance of the holistic or the integrative aspect because, like you said, the brain is the most important part of our processing and our decision making. So without that, if it's not functioning correctly, so yeah, integratively is definitely the approach that we choose here on this podcast as well. So thank you for
Yeah.
mentioning that. There's nothing wrong with La Botanica, you know.
Oh no, I love a good botanica. There's like a ton of great stuff to find there. I'm all about it. And sometimes with clients, what I do when they tell me that, like from the beginning, like, no, I'm not interested in medication. Okay, let's give ourselves some time to find the tools that are going to work for you. How do we create serotonin in unique ways? And let's give ourselves some time. And then for 6 weeks, let's allow the therapy to work. Let's allow, like, maybe you want to start crocheting, maybe you want to watch like a cool show on Netflix, you want to exercise. Awesome. In 4 to 6 weeks, if we don't see a change, maybe we can start to do some research and see if the brain needs like a boost with some type of medication.
Yeah, definitely. Like it just kind of fluctuates, right? Over the years, like, there's these moments of time where like everything just seems just fine. There's no need for any sort of medication. But then when there's a life change, it could be a physiological change with age. It could be so many things. It could be some stressor out there. And now we need some additional help. That's totally fine. And that's what it's
Exactly.
for.
Yeah. And I think that that's like another challenge with my clients who have autoimmune disorders is that they have to kind of be gentle on themselves because they might not be able to perform physically at the same level that they used to. And like in the Latinx community, cleaning is a ritual. Like that is like you take out your fabuloso and every week you have to totally clean. And so unfortunately they might not be able to clean every single day or like at the level that they used to. And that's okay. Like be gentle on yourself and honor your body, honor this process, and like start working with your body to see like how much you can do in a day.
Tell us a little bit more about your book and what we can look out for.
I am in the middle of it right now. I'm almost done. It's been exciting to work on. I wrote like the 10 commandments of like a well-behaved Latina daughter and like the unspoken rules that we have to follow. One of them being we don't share our family secrets with strangers, which is like the main hindrance to seeking therapy a lot of the time. I talk a lot about like my journey with having a parent with mental illness and the things that I did to reframe that experience for myself. And I talk about like my clients' challenges when they've had their own episodes of depression, or if they have loved ones in the house that are struggling with mental illness and what they did to overcome it. I talk about like dating and going away for school, because that's a big challenge too for a lot of like Latinx first generation Americans, is that you want to go away for school and you want to do all of the things, but our families may not be super supportive of that. And I mentioned like the reasons why, right? Because a lot of our families had to flee very difficult conditions. And if they could, they would be near their family. Like they had to leave. They didn't want to leave. And so then when you're like first generation American, you just got into a school across the country and your parents are like, what? Why? Like, why are you leaving me?
Yeah, you're choosing that. You don't have to.
Exactly. So I talk that. Yeah, it's very diverse. The book has a lot of different topics and it's very reflective of my clients and like how diverse my clients are, and the challenges that they come to me with are just as diverse. I'm excited.
Yay! So I'm really glad that you joined us today for this episode. Thank you so much for sharing the importance of mental health in the Latinx community, in our diverse communities, and also how to be a good Latina daughter, how to be a good Latinx daughter, Latinx child even. Here on the Sisterhood of Limitless Living, definitely our sisterhood of women who are thriving despite autoimmune and chronic illnesses. And we are multicultural. So if you could, en español, por favor, si quieres, ¿qué es importante cuando alguien está con mucha dificultad y buscan ayuda para saber cómo vivir bien con las enfermedades crónicas, con las enfermedades autoinmunes? What can we tell them if they're going through depression and anxiety as well? What advice would you provide to them? ¿Cuáles son los consejos que tienes?
Pues sí, en primera buscar ayuda, que no están sola con esta batalla, sino que hay profesionales que quieren ayudar y que tienen las herramientas para poder trabajar con ellas y buscar alguna ayuda. Eso es lo primero. También normalizar que todo el mundo está experimentando algún sufrimiento, si es físico, si es emocional, mental, todo el mundo, porque yo estoy de la opinión que el sufrimiento es parte de ser humano. Todos los seres humanos sufren y no podemos evitar el sufrimiento, pero sí podemos buscar herramientas para poder navegar el sufrimiento.
So basically, you're free to translate this as well, but from what I'm hearing, we're not alone. And this is important for us to know first and foremost, especially here on the sisterhood. We're all here together. We are experiencing these chronic illnesses with you. We're living with these autoimmune conditions with you. You are not alone. And then the other thing is, it's part of the human journey for us all to be suffering. Suffering is just a part of life. It's not the only part of life, but it's definitely an aspect. And in this podcast as well, we like to talk about how, it is something we have to deal with. We don't deny the fact that there is difficulty in limitless living. We don't deny the fact that there are challenges that try to get us to limit our minds mentally, but just knowing that it's part of life and how you choose to respond to it really matters as well.
So. Right, exactly. Because I'll tell clients, like, it's a fool's errand to avoid sadness, to avoid not suffering, because I do believe that it is part of the human condition, but it's all about like the tools that you use to navigate those challenges. That's where the power lies.
Y también es parte de la cultura latina. También it's like the suffering as part of the experience of living, right? The music, the songs about,
The novelas always have some dramatic sufrimiento. It's a part of it. And it's interesting, right? Because we do tend to like romanticize like the suffering a little bit, but could there be power in that? And knowing that like there is strength in being able to sit with the discomfort. There is immense strength, and our culture is all about strength. We pride ourselves like on being strong. It's like fundamental to us. It's not avoiding the suffering that will make you strong. It's being able to like sit with it and find a way out that makes you strong.
Exactly. How do we get through this puzzle How do we get through this challenge on this journey, this life journey, choosing to believe that there's a reason for what we're going through, right? And how are we going to learn from this? How are we going to help others? How are we going to help humanity? Thank you so much for joining us today. I love the tips and advice that you provided today. Gracias por los consejos. And
De nada.
I really enjoyed our conversation today. Melissa Moya-Brinckman, thank you for being here with us today. And I look forward to your book. I cannot wait to read it. Please share with us your social media links. How can we get in contact with you?
Yes, so I'm mainly on Instagram. I post like a lot of different mental health tips and little tidbits, and it's MMB Healing. That's my Instagram.
Great. And then you are licensed to practice in which states?
In Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and South Carolina.
Comunidad, sisterhood, if you're seeking mental health services and you're in those states, please consider reaching out to MMB Healing on Instagram. Melissa Moya-Brinckman, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Thank you for joining us today for this episode of the Sisterhood of Limitless Living. I hope you found this episode helpful and beneficial along your autoimmune journey. Feel free to reach us at sisterhoodoflimitlessliving.com for more information about our podcast, other episodes, and if you click on the resource tab, there's more information about resources that can be helpful for you along the journey, information, tips, and even worksheets related to our topics on the podcast episodes. sisterhoodoflimitlessliving.com. Visit us on Twitter at SL3Limitless or on Instagram at Dr. April Wellness, all spelled out. Take care and have a good day.